Oh, come in, come in. Oh. You've made it through the heat. At least it's slightly less of a sort of obstacle course. You see, I've actually managed to pick things up off the floor. Although if you turn around and look at the desk, you'll see to a certain degree it's just lifting them up a little. And I must, get to that. It troubles me because I have many, outstanding notes and letters. Lots of people write to me, and I do try to keep up with my correspondence, but I've fallen hopelessly behind with it. Anyway, I do open the things that are in the post, and I have to say I had a very nice thing in the post, which I was expecting. So, having read a lot of old books with you, I'm going to show you a new book, which I'm just delighted to possess. Although when I say new, of course, it's a new book which translates and represents and gives to us something very old indeed, which is the kind of lost treasures of our Anglo-Saxon inheritance and culture. I mean, so much of great Anglo-Saxon culture was kind of stamped on and destroyed by the Normans, which was why Tolkien regarded 1066 as a bit of a disaster, really. But a lot survives, and we have the great Anglo-Saxon poems, first Christian poems in English that I've delighted in and written about myself, like The Dream of the Rood and so on. But there's a wealth of stuff out there. And there's a wonderful scholar in Oxford, she's at Brasenose College, called Eleanor Parker, who tweets and has a blog, magnificent. She tweets under the title Clerk of Oxenford, which is a sort of borrowing of or Oxford. She says Oxford rather than Oxenford, but anyway, it's a riff on Chaucer. But she shares this with Lewis. I'll just close the door. She shares this with Lewis that although she's a very fine scholar in her own right and a proper full-on Anglo-Saxon and Norse and Celtic and all of that, she shares with Lewis the capacity to communicate the best of her scholarship in untechnical language and in a way that's winning and inviting to a wider audience. So I knew this was coming because I had the honour of reading this book in manuscript, as it were. Well, except it's never a manuscript now; it's a PDF that's sent to you. Because I was asked if I would endorse it and write something about it. So maybe just by way of intro, there's various nice endorsements on the back from various professors in Oxford and from Francis Young, the author of Magic in Merlin's Realm, a history of occult politics in Britain. But then there's one from me. So I wrote about this book. It's written on the back here. This book is a treasure and a delight, full of beautiful poetry and prose from the treasure house of Anglo-Saxon culture. Lucid translations, accessible introductions and explanation all combine to lead us through the cycle of the seasons. Eleanor Parker offers us a vision of time itself made sacred, each month hallowed, full of unexpected beauty and wisdom. And that, as you will see, is the way the book is laid out. It takes you through the whole year, both the seasons of the weather and the months and there's the sacred seasons, and just draws on Anglo-Saxon poetry and prose and gives you their view. And it's very sharp and beautiful and refreshing. Anyway, as you have somehow managed to get here on what has now, I think, become the hottest day in England ever on record, I thought we'd look at a wonderful passage about summer from the early English poem, the Anglo-Saxon poem, The Phoenix, which is a great poem, which of course is about the mythical bird, the phoenix, and how it built, the tree it nests in and the nest it builds, and then of course it goes up in flames but is reborn. And in the true tradition of medieval bestiaries, the author of that poem is fully aware that the phoenix is a type of Christ, is an emblem, and that this is a poem not only about summer and birds and trees, but it's a poem about death and resurrection. And she has a little section in this book called Eternal Summer, in which she discusses that poem. She says this poem contains some of the loveliest nature writing in Old English. The phoenix lives in a paradise of eternal summer, a beautiful land untouched by rain or snow, hail or frost, a place where the leaves never wither and the fruit never falls. Considering that much old English poetry is decidedly wintry in character. It certainly is. They do dreich and wintry incredibly well, the Anglo-Saxons. Anyway, most Old English poetry is decidedly wintry in character. This makes the Phoenix something of a rare treat. And then she offers some really lovely verse translation of passages from it. And I thought I'd just read you some of those because they're so good. She introduces this thing. She says, this poet for a change dwells with delight on scenes of blazing sunshine, leafy glades and cooling rivers, which is what I'm seeking to enjoy, some cooling rivers soon amidst this heat. So here's a bit of Eleanor Parker's translation. That is a joyous plain, a green weald, spacious under the skies. There neither rain nor snow, nor blast of frost, nor the blaze of fire, nor the fall of hail, nor the descent of rime, nor the sun's heat, nor the bitter cold, nor turbulent warm weather, nor winter showers can cause any harm. The field remains blessed and unimpaired. Serene is that plain of victory. The sunny grove glitters, the joyous wooded holt. The fruits never fall, bright branches, but the trees stand evergreen as God commanded them. Winter and summer, the wood is alike laden with foliage. No leaf ever withers beneath the sky, nor does fire harm them eternally. You can hear she's picked up the rhythm of Anglo-Saxon poetry and quite a bit of the alliteration. And when she comes to describe, when the poet comes to describe the tree in which the phoenix roosts as a kind of paradisal tree, but there's also clearly an awareness of the great hymns to the cross as the true tree of life and as the king's tree. To that tree the king, mighty in glory, measure of mankind, has granted, I have heard, that alone of all trees which lift up their branches upon the earth, its bloom is the brightest. No wicked thing can do it harm. It is shielded forever, abiding untouched, as long as the world stands. And high in this tree, I am reading to her prose now, the phoenix builds a nest, preparing for the cleansing fire that will be kindled by the sun's heat at the height of summer. You'll have noticed, of course, that this beautiful tree in a paradisal garden with a phoenix in it is gently alluded to, of course, in The Magician's Nephew when they get to the garden and Diggory's got to get the apple. And I think it's Polly who sees the phoenix in the tree. That's a little gentle nod from Lewis to the Anglo-Saxon poem. So here's the passage about the roosting in the tree. And again, you see beautiful natural description, but the sense of God's presence is woven into everything. And that's something we had right up until the 17th century, and then we sort of lost it, apart from some revival in Coleridge. But this early poetry moves very easily between the natural and the supernatural. They're not separated realms. There's not some, bizarre Kantian categorical divide or Cartesian dualism where this is just solid lumpy material and over in some incomprehensible ethereum is the so-called spiritual. These things are completely woven together. So I think this is she's made some fine English poetry, some fine English literature poetry out of her translation of. We looked at Patterson doing versioning. This is translation rather than versioning. It's close to the original, but it comes across as beautiful, lucid English. So listen to this. I think this is just what you want for a poem on the brightest and hottest day of the year. When the wind dies down, the weather is fair. The holy gem of the heavens shines brightly. That's referring to the sun, of course. This is a wonderful Anglo-Saxon and Norse way of kennings or emblems. You never quite call a spade if you can call it an earth biter, and you never call the sun without calling it the bright gem of the heavens. It's wonderful. When the wind dies down, the weather is fair. The holy gem of the heavens shines brightly. Clouds are dispersed. The tumult of waters grows still. Every storm beneath the skies is calmed. The burning candle of the air, another thing for the sun, shines from the south, giving light to men. Then, he begins to build in the branches. That's the phoenix, that is. He collects and gathers the sweetest spices to that dwelling place, every kind of noble fragrance, pleasant herbs and fruit of the woods, which the King of Glory, Father of every beginning, created across the world for the glory of mankind, sweet under the skies. There he carries bright ornaments to that tree. There the wild bird builds his house in the wilderness, on the tall tree, fair and joyous, and there he dwells alone in that sunny chamber, and on the outside surrounds himself, body and feathers in the shade of the leaves on every side, with blessed scents and the noblest fruits of earth. And then when in the summer, the jewel of the sky, the sun at its hottest shines above the shadows and fulfills its destiny, gazing far across the world. Then this house is heated by the brilliant radiance. The herbs are warmed, the beloved hall smokes with sweet fragrance. Then seized by fire, the bird burns in the flames within its nest. It's fantastic. And she points out in her commentary on all these beautiful poetic variations of the sun and of the tree itself. I'll just read you her final paragraph in this account of the phoenix that comes just after that passage I've quoted. Consumed by fire, the phoenix regenerates and takes again his youthful form. Then the cycle is repeated. As the poem describes it, this process of self-immolation mirrors the seasonal cycle of growth, death, and rebirth. The bird building his nest suggests the spring. It's the height of the summer when the fire is kindled. Then comes the harvest and the cycle begins again. In our world, unlike the paradisal landscape of this poem, summer does fade and pass into autumn, and the earth experiences a kind of death. But every year it's reborn, like the phoenix, with the return of spring. It's very, very beautiful, so I thought it would be fun to share. The other thing she does in this book is, I've just read you her English translations, but she quite often gives you the Anglo-Saxon. Here's her introduction to the Anglo-Saxon here. And so you get these wonderful Anglo-Saxon letters, so winter beith cealdest, lengten chrimigost, hebith lengus ceald, summer sunwit legost, swagel beith hatost. That's wonderful. So, winter is coldest, spring frostiest, its longest cold, summer sun brightest, the sun is hottest, harvest most glory blessed. It brings to men the year's fruits, which God sends them. Isn't he? God is just moving in and out of it everywhere. So when I came up to Cambridge, you had to do another language as well as English, and I started doing French, but I really couldn't get on with it. And I switched to Anglo-Saxon, and so I had the great pleasure of learning a little Anglo-Saxon and learning how to read it, and I'm really glad I did. But I only wish I could back then, in the 70s, have had this book, which of course wasn't published until this year, 2022. But it's definitely a really good addition to my library, and I hope we'll cast one or two more spells in the library with these wonderful spells. Of course, some of the Anglo-Saxon poems are spells, good spells, God spells, gospels in some way. So, cheers, thanks for making your way through the heat to join me.